presented by Sparta Systems and November Research Group. Before we begin the event, we have a few housekeeping announcements. All attendees are muted upon entry into the event. Please use the question panel on the right side of your screen to send questions at any time during the webinar. All attendees will receive a copy of the recording 24 hours after the event has concluded. Our presenters for today's webinar are Anjani Jha and Dave Hess. Anjani is a Senior Director at November Research Group for 4.5 years. His expertise is in process transformation and product implementations across both product quality and product safety chain value. He has served as a subject matter expert, a solutions architect, and account manager for both or for all Tier 1, 2, and 3 pharmaceutical, medical devices, CROs, and biotech. Anjani has a bachelor's in engineering with honors in mechanical engineering. Dave Hess is a solutions consultant at Sparta Systems and has been with the company for over 5 years. He has worked in both product support as well as the professional services group. Dave's focus is on integration, and he's got 14 years experience in programming. His BS is in computer science from Rutgers University. I would now like to turn things over to Anjani.
Thank you, Colleen. Good morning, everybody. My name is Anjani Jha, and during the next 45 minutes, David Hess and I will be co-presenting on the need of product safety and product quality convergence. So here is a quick glance at the agenda. So we will be discussing about the key business drivers. So in the need for integration, we'll be discussing about key reasons or the key business drivers for doing the integration. And that can include regulatory needs, that can include the technological need or process need, and we'll discuss about it in the next couple of slides. To follow it up, we'll pick 2 cases and discuss 2 cases, the real-time cases from a truly integrated platform. Then we'll briefly talk about the data exchange, what kinds of data should be typically exchanged between product safety and the product quality systems. To sum it up, to summarize the need, we'll quickly talk about the benefits of the integration, why is it needed, and what value does it bring to pharma companies and medical device companies. And towards the end, we'll quickly introduce November Research Group, Sparta Systems, and we'll have a chance to do a Q&A and talk about the next steps. So until recently, product quality issues, particularly for marketed drugs and devices, is an area where not a lot of attention has been paid to, and this has been duly noted by the regulators. Especially in this slide, we will be talking about FDA, which expects now company to be aware of and act immediately on any product complaint, especially if it involves any issues around adverse events. So any product complaint, if it has or it is close to have an adverse event, FDA requires companies to report, first be aware of, and report and do the investigation on it. The direct requirement, and especially for the US, the direct requirement for product complaint and drug safety is mentioned in the regulation 21 CFR Part 211.198. Especially, it's a big regulation, but the part which concerns most is towards the end, and which is also highlighted in the screen about the correlation and the reporting of adverse event resulting due to a product complaint. If you see, and I'll give, please go ahead and, you can read it through. But if you see, the law states that there must be a system to determine whether there is a relation between a product complaint and a serious adverse, unexpected serious SAE, which is a serious adverse event. And if so, if there is a relation that it needs to be reported to FDA.
On top of this, it needs to be reported in a timely manner. These are all timed events and have 30 days in general to be reported from the time of being acknowledged. So that really plays into part of getting it done and getting it done quickly for them to see the result.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. And also, there are different in both when you talk about the product complaint as well as product safety. There are different reporting timelines. There is a 3-day timeline for product complaint and so on. Similarly, in product safety, we have 7 days, 15 days, 30 days, 90 days, based on the seriousness criteria. So if, in a nutshell, if there is an adverse event associated with the product complaint, first the company must act upon, do the investigation, and figure out whether it needs to be reported in a timely manner. In this slide, we will be talking about the non-compliance to 21 CFR 211.198. So this is obviously taken very seriously by the FDA, and recently has been cited in various communications to companies when the audit happened, as well as in terms of the warning letters. So if you see the screen in the last couple of years, if you see, almost 50 firms have received warning letters for being non-compliant to 21 CFR 211 Part 198. So usually, I mean, the issues revolve around companies either not having the adequate procedures in place for evaluating drug safety complaint, or rather a product complaint relating to a drug safety event, or if there are already procedures in place, then they are not following it. So to get, in this screen we will briefly touch about the recalls. So to get an idea of the magnitude of situations, what if what if due to the warning letters, what happens? What is the next steps to it? If the companies are non-compliant, if there are a lot of products being manufactured which are non-compliant, if there is a harm to public health, then the next steps which we talk about is the recent recalls. So if you go to the FDA website, which they regularly update for recalls, you will see in just a matter of 2.5 months, almost 8 drugs have been recalled. And these have some or the other way, they have questioned the integrity of either the integrity of the data or the quality of the product, or an adverse event coming out of the product quality, due to the product quality.
And of course, the end goal here is to not have to have a recall, of course. The price that you end up paying for one of those recalls and all the lawsuits to go along with it is exponentially higher than disarming it on the front end, but even still, we have to be able to correctly determine if it's reportable, and based on that, make correct decisions and take care of our consumers. This is not the perfect situation, but we have to roll with it when these things come up.
Absolutely. So now the question is, if you haven't been audited or you haven't been issued a warning letter by FDA, so there are other reasons to worry about now, because there are other health authorities and regulators which are following the lines of FDA, and they are getting more focused and more they're monitoring the procedures, they're monitoring the facts coming out of product complaints, especially if it relates to adverse events. In the next couple of slides, we'll talk about what if you are being cited by other regulators which are not FDA. So, for example, let's talk quickly about Health Canada, our neighboring country, and Health Canada has been following FDA very closely in the last couple of years. And one of the things which you see here is, in just 2 weeks, in June in 2015, which we are in at this time, there have been 10 advisories or warnings or recalls by Health Canada, which talks about the seriousness, how serious it is. So now, in this slide, we'll be talking about, what is integration, what is product, what is product complaint, or what is product safety. I mean, we had been talking about, but let's quickly understand what these two things are. Why do we need to integrate? What are we talking about here? So a product complaint with an adverse event will normally undergo both product quality evaluation as well as drug safety evaluation. And these two are done by totally two different teams and two different processes happening. So if you see here, in this screen, in the diagram, it is clearly demarcated. One is the complaint department handling a complaint, and the other is a pharmacovigilance department or the product safety department handling the AE or doing the adverse event management. Let's
just important to
put
note
our
here that,
let's put our go ahead, David.
No, just important to note here, we're really looking at post-market complaints here. We're not looking at clinical. We're really looking at your product has come to market, and we're moving forward with consumer complaints or product inquiries that are coming in. We determine whether or not they're a complaint in the initial intake process. But it's important to make that distinction.
Yes. So if we focus ourselves towards the right side of the diagram, which says when a complaint is received, it has to undergo the investigation. And there is and a lot of things are there in investigation. I mean, you check the samples, you do the lab testing, you figure out whether there is a true product defect under it or not. And once you finalize that, okay, there is a true defect, then you figure out whether there is a regulatory impact to it. So which means, do you need to resubmit a lot of tracking information? Do you need to submit process information back to the regulators? Or there is a valid product recall. I mean, you have to recall it. Certainly this involves regulatory aspects as well. Or at the, if it's a drug, do you need to go ahead just relabel it? So at some point of time, you have to inform, you have to take, you have to take into confidence the regulators. So, and once you have finalized that, okay, this is a valid product defect, we have to either do a recall or do something else. Then you go into the CAPA mode, corrective and preventive action. You go ahead, figure out what are the steps, where it all happened, which plant was involved, which site was involved, and then you go ahead and do, the corrective and preventive action. You either figure out the process due to which it failed and fix it, or any other manufacturing defect, you go ahead and fix that through a change control process for sure. And to ensure that the CAPA which you have put in place, it's working, what you do is you do check and balance, which is also called an effectiveness check. So you periodically go ahead and do a check and balance on that. So this is on a 50,000 foot view, how a product complaint process is done. Now let's focus towards the left side of the figure, which says AE management. Again, it's done by the product safety department or the pharmacovigilance department. Many of you know by this name. When a case is reported, it undergoes a lot of internal processes, and there are SOPs in place to do the triaging, the medical review, the quality review, the causality and the seriousness assessment, and towards the end, if there is a need to report. So now, at both the times, since we have seen a holistic view of the entire process, you see multiple processes are happening, multiple people are involved, a lot of people are involved, a lot of processes are involved. And if you don't integrate, you have two people working on the same case. And do remember, we are only talking about one investigation. So you have two different departments, 50s, hundreds of people working on this case on one investigation, and they are not integrated. They are not communicating enough. The databases are not technologically integrated and so on. Now, in the last slide, we talked about different processes. So here we are talking about now there are different processes, different departments. Now let's talk about, do these people need to communicate at all, right? So in the next, in the next few minutes, we'll talk about why the communication is needed. Can these two people work effectively without the communication? And I would guess everybody would say no, completely no, and the answer is yes. We need, there are three different points which I would like to touch why we need to achieve the effective communication. First, we need to communicate to effectively route the cases, prompt routing of the cases. Two different systems working on the same case. Unless we route the cases in right time, how does the other department know that there is a case, right? And so what normally happens is you receive a product complaint, and the entire process, the due diligence happens, but the information is not passed on to the safety department at the right time. So by the time the safety department receives the information and does an assessment and figures out there is a serious adverse unexpected event, which should have been rather reported in 15 days. So by the time they receive the case, they are already non-compliant because it's after 15 days. So you see how a lack of communication causes late case or even missed case. Due to the lack of integration, they even forget to send the cases, which they figure out in a couple of months that okay, there was a case, and now they go back and search their archives that there was a case which could have been reported. So now they are non-compliant. The next is even they exchange the cases in time, there is a lot of dependent information which needs to be passed on, right? for reviewing the case. So for example, a product complaint cannot proceed unless they understand truly what is the safety investigation of it. What is the case disposition summary or the case summary? What is the true investigational output? What is the seriousness? Similarly, product safety cannot go ahead and work on the case unless they get the true assessment from the product complaint department. What is the investigational result? What is the batch lot? And these need to be reported from the product department, product safety department, and from the product quality department. So in a nutshell, FDA also expects both these departments to be in sync by enforcing the data, a similar kind of data coming out of both the departments. So again, there is unless you are communicating well enough, you can't give that kind of data. Third, which is very important, as an outsider, as a leader of the department, I am not involved in day-to-day business. But at one point of time, I need to trace the information. On 13th day of my case investigation, what is my product quality department doing and what is my product safety department doing? So unless I have a true integrated process as well as a truly integrated system, I cannot trace it back. So I'll have to go ahead and do all the manual workarounds, go for a meeting, and every 15-day or 30-day meeting. So I'll have to wait. But if the system is truly integrated, with the press of a button, I can have the access, or I can trace where my case is at this time. The next, and which is the most important point, which is the most unfortunate point as well, that sometimes, and David briefly discussed about it, is the legal department. So sometimes we have to give the data to other departments as well. Sometimes, we end up doing a product recall. We end up being a victim of a litigation. So at that time, you don't have an integrated system. You have a team, the legal department, which works completely aloof, or most of the time works aloof from the product safety and product quality department. Now they are requiring information to work on the legal case. And now you're struggling to provide that data. So this is, for a company, this is extremely important, and having an integrated system enables not only the interdepartmental communication, which is product safety and quality, but also the communication from outside. So outside clients, which is legal and other related departments. David, do you want to add something?
Just in the end, you're going to be working against yourself if you don't make these things readily available across your systems. Not every user is going to be in your quality system. Not every user is going to be in your drug safety. And certainly those legal users are not going to be in either one unless they really have to be. So making it nice and easy for them to pull out these pieces of information without having to go to additional sources. You're already working against the clock. It doesn't make sense to add that on top of that pile. Just make it harder for those users.
Thank you, David. Again, if I summarize the communication, I'd say, late reporting. I think late reporting is a ticking time bomb. Unless if there is a late the routing of case to the product department, think about what can be done during that time. What the product quality team could have done. So if there is a late routing of case, the product quality might have manufactured tons and tons of good. They have shipped tons and tons of goods outside, which is costly, which may end up being a costly recall. There may be a chance of severe damage to public health. And last but not the least, you have legalities. So communication is very, very effective and very much needed. So now, if in this slide, if you see this infographic, it is quite interesting, and it's based on a couple of studies performed. That if for every case or for all the cases received in the product quality system, almost 10% of the cases have a adverse event. And if
we end up having a lot of product inquiries come in, and most of them don't even make to the point where we consider them to be a complaint. And that's just off the top. So if we cut those out of our complaints, we'll end up with roughly 10% of those that will end up having, or actually more than that for complaints. But we have to go through those steps and make determinations for the assessment if it's going to be a reportable adverse event. And most of the time, we can put in decision trees or some automation to make certain that if we have, obviously if death occurred, then that's going to be something that we report. We make determinations along the way through a series of questions to determine if it's something that we need to push over. And most times it's better to err on the side of caution there and submit when certain adverse event type situations or seriousness occurs.
Yeah, and if you just look at the other area or other aspect of it, the almost 10 to 40% of the cases which are reported directly to the pharmacovigilance department or the product safety department, almost 10 to 40% of those cases have a valid product complaint associated with it. So it's quite interesting. Think about, each department is sitting on this case and not sharing the information. So think about the compliance issue you are, inviting unknowingly by not integrating the system, by not communicating well, by not having the communication in place, by not having the procedures in place. And a couple of examples, out of many, which can be caused is late reporting, which we already discussed, late discovery of serious manufacturing defects, compliance risk, and laborious information reconciliation process. Okay, so if you have an integrated system, one does not need to hunt for data in various pockets. You have one click of a button, you get the data. And regardless you are a leader of the department, regardless you are in a legal department, regulatory department, you have the information handy. You're not asking, you're not calling for meetings, mails, faxes, and so on. So in order to summarize the need for integration, so if I want my reduced risk to public safety, if the goal of my company is to reduce public harm and enable safety, if my goal is to reduce the warnings or eliminate the warnings or recalls I'm getting from regulators, if my goal is to achieve 100% compliance, and not last but not the least, to completely eliminate human errors, then we need to integrate. So by doing the integration, we quickly go ahead, reduce the risk, avoid any compliance issues, avoid any warnings from FDA and Health Canada and other regulators. And obviously, we are not exchanging over faxes, walking over to the desk and giving the cases, taking a call and so on. On the terms of efficiency, cost benefits. At the end of the day, everybody works for money. The operational efficiency is increased just by doing the integration, having the right information at right time. The data reconciliation, again, this is very important. When the FDA auditors or when the Health Canada or other auditors, they go ahead and audit, they need, sometimes what frustrates them, it's that data is there, but it's not reconciled. And when they are doing the audit, they don't have time, and they get frustrated that you don't have a process in place to get, if I'm looking for one case, why are you showing me different listings? Why are you talking about listings or peer report or any other report? I'm just talking about one case. Give me the end-to-end traceability for this case from the time the complaint was received to the time the safety department reported it. What is the causality? What is the seriousness? I need one traceability of it. And that data reconciliation is frustrates, the lack of data reconciliation frustrates the regulators, and by doing it, we ensure that there is there. Based on the recent studies, if you have a truly integrated system, there is an increase of 20% productivity in the initial few years with a long-term goal of 35% increase in the productivity, which is a lot of benefit. David?
You hit it right on the head. I mean, we're trying to get to the point where your auditors are not going to be unhappy, because that's going to just make the whole process much more difficult. And all of your users should be able to access this information with their security roles intact across those systems, and have it all have current data and be referential between those systems. That's the end goal, and that's what really makes up for the time that we lose for waiting for a return to come back in so we can investigate it, or the patient wasn't available for further questioning. Those are things that are going to ding away at time. We shouldn't have to look in both systems.
Thank you. So now in next couple of slides, we'll talk about use cases. So these are real-time cases from different industries or different companies which are integrated. So what we have done is pick two cases to showcase how a true integration should work. And do remember that we are not talking about technology. We are just talking about the process. We are talking about the vision of integration. Okay. So a complaint was filed. The use case one is a complaint was filed in the complaint system where a patient reported that the pre-filled wonder drug injection was filled too high with too much of medication, which led to a more intense drug reaction when he injected. And then patient said that a call should be fine. So I mean, this is a product complaint associated with an adverse event that was entered in the complete system. So you clearly see that there was a high, the injection was filled too much, and it caused intense reaction. So certainly this has to be a product complaint, why it was filled too much. So investigation needs to be done from the product complaint and to figure out why this happened. Secondly, it talks about intense reaction. So the intense reaction can be either serious or non-serious, and the only team which can do that kind of investigation is the product safety department. So again, the quality unit will need to investigate the root cause of the manufacturing defect on one hand, and the drug safety unit will need to be informed about the initial information, follow-up information, and they will do their due diligence and figure out if there is a reportability or not, and complete the follow-up, complete the safety evaluation. So this is an integrated solution for the use case one. If you see, the complaint was received, just the moment it is received, and the point to remember is this decision where it says involves adverse event. So what we do, instead of completing the entire product complaint process, the moment when it is received, it is triaged. And at that triage, I make certain decisions that does it have a valid AE associated with it? Or is there a possibility of having a valid AE associated with this complaint? And as soon as, this is a parameter, okay, and this parameter can be defined when you're trying to integrate. This can be, this is actually a user requirement, a business requirement, so you can define it. It can be a couple of action items. You can say that, if there is a word called reaction or something like that, then send it to adverse, the product safety team. So if you see there is a triaging, it says yes, the product has a AE. There is an immediate case creation in the product safety database, which is a unique case number, and the safety processing starts. Similarly, at the same time, the complaint investigation is happening, and the arrows, back and forth arrows, if you see the investigational results and the safety results, the system has been defined, and this is the beauty of integration, is the system has been designed that even though while you're doing the investigation, the results flows to the other department, the result flows to the other database. The other way I can think of this integrated solution is, and which is a little bit more complex, which what I have said, is a complaint was received. Let's think of it as a complaint was received, but the initial didn't have a AE associated with it. But as soon as there is a follow-up, it was figured out, or it was analyzed, that it may have an AE. So after the follow-up was received, it was sent to the safety department. So you can think about, these are just two complexities I'm talking about. Think about hundreds and hundreds of other complexities which are involved in case processing, which we can discuss. One of the other examples I can give, which needs to be thought about, is when do you integrate? When do you exchange the information? For example, these two departments are working, and I have a follow-up information which came in. Do I immediately send it? Maybe the safety department is on the 15th day, and they are trying to report it to FDA. Should I send the follow-up information now? So now these drivers need to be discussed again, but we have a system in place wherein we can code, you can manage all these use cases or all these scenarios. Let's quickly go ahead and quickly check the use case number 2. Again, the drug safety department received the case. So this is the other way around. Receive a case via an E2B where the patient reported that she has experienced flu-like symptoms characterized by chills and muscle aches with her last shipment of pre-filled syringes of Wonder Drug. So which means that there was a shipment, she received, she injected, she had chills. When she received her new shipment, she used a dose of that and experienced no shipment. So there is something, if you read it, it looks like there is something which is wrong with the shipment number 1. So what it tells me, that this is an adverse drug reaction, or this is a SAE or a AE with possibility of a product quality issue. So we have the product safety department working on this case, doing the investigation, doing the safety investigation, and at the same time, this case needs to be routed to product quality department, where they do they would figure out what was the issue with the first shipment, where the manufacturing was done, which site was done, it was done, did they follow the right process, and all the due diligence about that. And in process, they will go ahead, and if the follow-up comes, they will exchange it. So this is the other way around. You are seeing that adverse event received, and now during the triaging, and think about, this is just the first day. So I received the case today, my triager goes ahead, who can be, and this triager can be a healthcare professional or can be a trained professional. He or she can go ahead and figure out, does it have a valid product complaint? And there can be again the same parameters which we can define the system, and the system directly pushes the case to the product complaint or the TrackWise, for example, TrackWise database, where a case is created and the same investigation happens in both the as it was in use case 1. During both the processes, if you see use case 1 or use case 2, the follow-up can come either directly to the pharmacovigilance department, or it can come via the medical representatives to the product complaint system. But since we have an integrated solution in place, it really doesn't matter where the follow-up is coming, because the information flows from one end to the other end. Okay. So now in this slide, we already talked about what, there is a need for integration. We already talked about there is a need for integration. But when we integrate, what kind of data do we see? What kind of data do we foresee that can be exchanged between the two systems? So here is a quick glimpse of, and again, it's a quick glimpse because there can be many other data which can be transferred, right? But on a high level, if I am reporting to FDA, regardless I am reporting from as a product complaint system, or I'm reporting from the product safety system, these are the kind of data they expect. Like if I'm talking about the safety processes in the product safety department, my regulator wants to know what is the medical analysis, what is the patient correspondence, and so on. And within these two interdepartmental departments, we can exchange information like, what are the sample results of the investigation done by product complaint? What was the patient correspondence? And normally when the patient correspondence happens in the product quality, there can be voice call records, telephone call records, or, recordings, or there can be emails, there can be questionnaires. So all these data can be transferred to the product safety department, which can help them in analyzing or doing the medical analysis of the case. Similarly, the drug safety department or the product safety will need batch lot information, because this is something which we report as part of one of our reports to the regulators. Similarly, the product complaint, while doing our investigation, this side on the left side, the product complaint teams requires what is the investigation, safety investigation result, what is the case disposition summary result or the case summary result, what is the company analysis, what are the drug event codes, and so on. So these are just 50,000-foot view of the data which can be exchanged. But again, these are all parameters. Okay, these are all parameters, and there can be numerous other parameters which can be exchanged on the fly if the systems are integrated. Anything to add, David?
Just the fact that I'm in the complaint system or I'm in the safety system, and I just want to save the record. I did my one thing, I talked to the patient, and I saved it. That information automatically goes over to the other side, so whoever picks it up next has the most up-to-date information and can see into both sides without having to log into the other system. I can't stress that enough, that you're not going to always check into the other system. You're going to be working in the one that you're using currently, and you should be able to see every piece of information that makes sense to talk to that patient and then to push that investigation forward.
Thank you, David. So now, on a closing note, if I could reiterate or summarize the discussion we had in the last couple of minutes, that if you like to significantly reduce the case handling efforts from both the departments, or rather in both the departments, you want to increase your compliance, as well as if you want to ensure that there is the completeness of the case, the quality standard of the case, the data integrity of the case, then the way out is integration. So unless you have an integration in place, it is extremely hard to have the communication, to exchange, to route the cases on time. It is extremely hard. There will be a lot of additional efforts, manual efforts, as we talked about in the last couple of slides. People exchanging emails. If there is no integration, there is reduced compliance, which we talked as well. Late reporting, recalls, expensive litigations, and so on. And to the last, you would have data integrity issues for sure. You have reconciliation issues for sure. You would have traceability issues for sure. So this is the summary why you should do it. It's to reduce your effort, to increase the compliance, to make the public as well as to make the regulators happy and ensure the integrity of the data. So I think this is the last, this brings us to the last slide or the last topic of our webinar. And, David, if you want to add something, or Colleen or Celine, if you want to add something. Other than that, we can quickly move and do a quick introduction about November Research and Sparta Systems, as well as give the attendees a chance to ask their questions. Okay. So, again, as Colleen introduced earlier, I am associated with November Research since over 4.5 years. And November Research is a dedicated leader in pharmacovigilance solutions, as well as the EQMS TrackWise solutions, focusing on servicing or providing services to clients across the globe. We have a footprint across Japan, US, Europe, and Asia, with offices in Japan, US, and India. On an average, we have every consultant we have across the globe at least has 12 years experience in drug safety. We are TrackWise certified. We are global implementation partners of TrackWise, as well as we are gold partners with Oracle. And the one thing which we have, other than providing services or consulting, we have our in-house products, multiple products, which feel free to go ahead and visit our website, novemberresearch.com. We have one of our key flagship products, Primo, which is data triaging and intake solutions, which is used globally, and we feel proud that one of the key regulators of the world has rather taken that product as an intake solution for their device cases. The other thing which we feel very proud is the value we bring to our clients. We internally create a lot of APIs, a lot of accelerators, a lot of knowledge assets. So, for example, if you come back as a client, if you come back and ask me that, Anjani, can November Research help us in doing the integration, some prototypes in TrackWise and some integration towards product safety, we have already a solution, an API in place. We can, with minor tweaks here and there, we can implement it with least cost to the clients as well as with the fastest delivery. So we don't believe in reinventing the wheel, and this we started almost many years back, way back in product safety, and we are following the same methodology in the product quality, which is during the TrackWise implementation. So again, I'd like to seriously and sincerely thank each and every person who is attending this webinar to give us a chance to speak, to connect with you, and hopefully in future we'll be connected. Here is the contact information for myself. You can always reach out to me via email and then phone, and you can always reach out to David whose contact information is already there. So I'll quickly pass on to David, who can quickly introduce Sparta Systems. So David, over to you, and thanks a lot.
Thanks. So Sparta Systems is an industry pioneer and leading provider of enterprise quality management software, EQMS solutions. We enable businesses to safely and efficiently deliver their products to market. TrackWise, you might have heard of, our EQMS, a trusted standard among highly regulated industries, is used by quality, manufacturing, and regulatory affairs professionals to manage compliance, reduce risk, and improve safety across the global enterprise. We're headquartered in New Jersey. We also have locations in Europe and Asia. We maintain an extensive install base across all regions with pharmaceutical and biotechnology, medical device, electronic manufacturing, consumer products, really anyone that requires any quality products or quality processes in their system. We've been around for more than 20 years, and we've been in this game for a long time. If you want some more information about Sparta Systems or TrackWise or any of our other products, please visit our website as well.
Okay. Anjani and Dave, thank you very much. Just so you know, there's been a couple questions that came in, and I think now's a pretty good time to address them. So I just want to, one of the first ones that came in is, what method would you suggest to integrate TrackWise with a safety system like Argus Safety?
Thank you. I can take this question. Sorry, Colleen, did I cut you short? You were asking.
No, you're fine.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for this question. I mean, normally there are multiple ways of integrating TrackWise and Argus Safety, and trust us, we are not doing any marketing for TrackWise either or Argus Safety. There can be other products as well which we can integrate. So we are talking here about only the solutions. So either the web services can be, and then particularly talking about TrackWise or Argus Safety, both support web services or both support direct database to database transactions or connections. We strongly recommend that you should use the web services out of TrackWise as well as web services out of Argus Safety for any integration. And the reasons are, as you know, TrackWise web services and Argus web services are very flexible. They are secure medium of communication, as well as this causes a minimum performance hit on either of the databases. So I mean, there can be multiple ways, but web services is a good way to look into it.
Great, thank you. Yeah, sure. There's the next one that came in is how do you generate reports to help identify trends in complaints between the two systems? An example, tracking and query capabilities.
So in particular, at least in TrackWise, we do have a full suite of either dashboarding or automated reporting that come up and notify users of when these product complaints are being created from the or from the drug safety system. So when a user logs in, they typically see their dashboard and note that a couple more complaints have filed in. We look at more of a proactive approach on this, so that users are consistently looking out to see if there are new records created. In general, though, when we're looking at the big picture and how many of these product complaints have come out for a particular product, we look at more of a dashboarding approach where, show me the top 10 product complaint products specified for the last month or the last 2 months or so on and so forth. And we have a tool we use called Quality View that allows you to drag and drop and create those reports on the fly.
Thank you, David. And to add to the safety, from the safety side, we also have a lot of dashboards, and also we have products. For example, we have a product called Web Reports, or Eureka, which does a lot of case ad hoc reporting as well as dashboards and so on. It works on big data platforms, so which means that the flexibility which you get in analyzing the data from two different systems or whatever system, it is pretty fast, as well as the alert signals which you receive from the safety side. That also gives you a lot of inputs, in-depth analysis about what kind of reporting you need to do.
Great. Okay, the next question is, based on both your experience, what challenges have you come across when integrating with the two systems?
Okay. So again, integration, the word seems very simple, but I'd say that it possesses a lot of technical and process challenges. Certainly both TrackWise as well as Argus Safety, I mean, these are complex database, and these have tremendous amount of data in it, complaint data, safety data. So designing an integration actually inherits the complexities itself. But I would equally stress the need for defining the process. So normally when we talk about integration, people think of it as just technology. And trust me, technology is just one piece of it. The bigger piece of the puzzle, or the bigger puzzle, is the process, defining the process. And I'd suggest setting up the process is the biggest challenge we have seen, along with the technological piece. So I'd ask the clients not to just think of integration between two systems merely as technology, which would be a big mistake. So I believe if you, for a successful integration, you have to define the process at the right time, right at the beginning, what data you need to exchange, what is the frequency of exchange, as well as create a platform to exchange that data.
I mean, the guideline of any interaction that I would have between the two systems should be an integration is a core point to drive in implementing both of these systems in a way that they can interact properly. Anytime that I would need to reach out to someone from the quality group or from the drug safety group, that should be something that I should be able to automate and I can still reach out to them if I need to, but at least then the simple questions that I'm going to ask them every single time, if I can get that information without having to reach out and draw them away from what they're working on, hands down, that's the best method.
Absolutely, absolutely.
This is probably very similar to that question, just kind of you can elaborate. Which system handles the escalation processes of safety concerns relating to the medicinal products within a group?
So there are actually, I'd speak on a different, two different ways. I mean, there are, one is the technology, which is, there is Argus safety for sure. There are Oracle AERS, which handles the safety concerns, which receives all the safety concerns. But on top of that, there are other systems which work. So you do a signaling on a different system, you do data mining on a different system, and and then you process it. But overall, there are multiple groups which are working here. I mean, if you have an issue out of Canada, then your internal regulatory department out of Canada will reach out to the Health Canada department or Canada MedEffects group, and they will also coordinate with internally with the US counterpart, as well as who will internally work with the US FDA and so on. So I mean, it's two different departments working, as well as two different technologies working.
You're never going to be able to take the human element out of that interaction. If an issue comes up that you do need to escalate and do need to let them know, it's often the case that you need to have someone that's designated as the true contact to any of those groups. And whether or not they're localized in the specific region, sometimes it helps. It tends to not, as long as someone is on top of those things.
Yeah.
The next question was, I think, about two questions before. What about ARIS integration?
Come again, Colin?
The question was, what about ARIS integration? ARIS, yeah.
So, in particular, the system that you're using to push these through, each one is going to have some way of integrating, whether it be the old school file drop method or a real-time RESTful web service that's going to be available to speak between those. It just depends on if they've made these points available or if it's something that needs to be driven through into a back-end process.
Yep.
In terms of ARIS, they do have a web service component, and that's something that you can use to push some of the information into there. But in general, it's the process that matters for this when I have these interactions, not with which system. Because you might not have TrackWise, you might not have Argus or ARIS. Whatever system you need, in the end, you do need to get this information in.
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what David, you said, I mean, regardless what you're, if you're using Argus Safety or Oracle AERS or even Iris Global SG, or even you are on a cloud, if you have the parameters and process defined at the first go, then it at the end of the day, it totally depends. You can write a custom ETL process that can take the data and do a nightly ETL. Or you can define the process when it's going. Even if you are using a cloud, I mean, lately I've seen a trend of customers being on cloud, so we can always go ahead and write those custom procedures to put the data or to fetch the data from TrackWise system or the product complaint system and put it in cloud in a certain manner. And if the web services are enabled, if the system, for example, there are a couple of systems which are pretty old and the web services entry are not possible, or not, at least from the out of the box that is not being enabled, then we can always go ahead and write custom web services, custom APIs. So regardless of the system, I would reiterate what David is saying. So regardless of the system, I would focus more on the process and your requirements, and we can define the technology as we move ahead. Hope this helps. Colleen, any more questions? I think there was one more, right?
Yeah, there's one more. How often would you foresee the database transfer between the systems happening? Or in other words, the frequency of the data transfer? Okay.
So I think, we briefly touched in last, I think in the last questions. I mean, there can be two modes of transfer. One is synchronous and one is asynchronous, which is, again, if you have a defined process, everything in place, if you have SOPs in place, you know what you want, you know when you want, you can have on the fly transfer. If the data, for example, if a data is entered, if a follow-up information is entered, if an action item is entered or changed in the TrackWise database, it can immediately be triggered and go into the safety database. This is one way of seeing it. The other way is you don't want to, in case the clients don't want to overtly complicate the process, then they can have a, like a nightly load of data from the system, TrackWise system, to the Argus Safety or AARS or ASG per se, and they can do that. So again, it depends. I mean, again, I'll again stress, first define your requirements, first define your processes, what you want, and we can change the data, we can move the data as per frequency what you need. I mean, there is a lot of flexibility which we have in the APIs, in the web services which we can define.
Yeah, the end goal here is to have a seamless integration that the user doesn't even know that this information is going to be populated into another system. It's just I'm going about my normal business day, putting in information that I need to make my decisions, and then these are going to be transferred over in the background. I'm not even aware of it because it's just happening and it just works. That's the end goal. And so if you can get to that point where users are just able to access the information that they need whenever it's available, that's what you're working towards.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd reiterate again, to, people on phone, that don't just focus on technology, that I want this data, because there can be a chance, and I already briefly touched about in a couple of slides, in one slide at least, that you have to define the process. What if there is a reporting happening, the case is on 14th day, you don't want, and then the regulatory team, or rather the internal reporting team in the product safety is working on generating the report and submitting it. You don't want at that time to push follow-up information in that case. So you have to figure out what the process is, and as soon as you finalize the process, that okay, until this workflow state, I don't, I want the follow-up information, but the moment this follow step, you go to the next step, please hold on to that information until there is a reporting happening. So after the reporting happens, then you put in the follow-up information from the product complaint database. So you have to think about these scenarios. I mean, we can always help ahead. There are a lot of use cases we have. We can help you with these scenarios, but focus on the process. Colleen, anything else?
Yes, there's one more question that came in, and here is, are there any concerns or issues regarding integration when two separate entities are managing each individually? And the example is MAH manages PQC, but a CRO manages the safety database.
Absolutely, absolutely not. I mean, there is no concern at all. I mean, normally the trend, and now if we are talking about tier 1, 2, and 3 clients, whether regardless it's med devices or for drugs, I mean, they always, none of the data entry or most of the data entry and triaging is done by CROs. So again, if you have a valid process in place, they will not even know that there is an integration. They'll get a case as they do every day through E2Bs. They're getting directly, or they're getting the literature cases and so on. Similarly, you'll get a case coming out of a product complaint. So as David said, there has to be a seamless integration, and regardless whether it's my company employees working or if my partners or CROs who are working, it really doesn't matter. As long as my process is in place, people doesn't matter.
Yeah, the end goal is to get the data into the system that you need to report from. In particular, for TrackWise, we have a product called Stratus that allows your suppliers or CROs, CMOs to get back to you with this information when you request it. And as long as it's coming into a system that's tied in and that's integrated to your drug safety system that's going to report these, it just works better when you have things streamlined. So I enter it on one side and ends up on the other side. It doesn't matter what system they're using, as long as you make that integration work.
Any more questions, Colin?
No, that's it. We've actually run out of time. It's noon, so I just want to thank Anjani and Dave for today's presentation. Everyone on the phone, thanks again for joining. I really appreciate it. The link to the webcast will be sent to everyone 24 hours after the call. And have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. Thank you, and we'll connect soon. Bye-bye.